It's 6:05, so we'll begin. And before we begin with the agenda, can I advise of a few housekeeping issues? Just to remind all present that under the Council's remote meeting procedures, this meeting is being live streamed and recorded for archive purposes on the Council's website. Can I ask members, except for Cabinet members and group leaders, to ensure your mics and cameras are turned off, please, until you're invited by myself to speak. For the benefit of those joining online, could you please limit the use of the chat facility to ensure all discussion takes place in the meeting, unless of course you have audio or camera issues, in which case if you have any technical difficulties, then please bring this to the attention of the Democratic Services Officer as soon as possible, who will let me know. Should you wish to speak, please use the raise your hand function in the Teams software and wait until invited to speak. If the raise your hand function doesn't work for any reason, you can also switch your camera on and raise your hand physically so that I can see that you're wanting to speak. With regard to the recommendations before us this evening, if there is no dissent to a recommendation, then I'll accept the silence as agreement. And finally, can I remind councillors that this meeting is being conducted in line with the standards set out in section 19, appendix 2 of the Council's constitution. And I kindly ask that all participants adhere to one speaker at a time. Thank you, councillors. So item 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies, please? Councillor Burnett.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I have 2 apologies for absence. That's Councillor Gareth Ball and Councillor Margaret Wilkinson. Also, I will give notice that Councillor Gilligan is currently supporting a neighbour with an emergency. She hopes to join us as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. We move on to the roll call and declarations of interest under the Council's Code of Conduct. Unfortunately, Rob, the CEO, is struggling with his voice this evening. So can I invite the Principal Democratic and Scrutiny Services Officer to take the roll call? Karen Bowen, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members. Could I start, please, with Councillor Anne Asprey?
Presennol a dim byd i'w ddatgan.
Councillor Julie Aviat.
Present, and I'd like to declare a personal but not prejudicial interest in agenda item 3A, as I am a tenant of the Vale of Glamorgan.
Thank you. Councillor Rhiannon Birch.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Bronwyn Brooks.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Gillian Bruce.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Ian Buckley.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Liz Burnett.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Samantha Campbell.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor George Carroll.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Christine Cave.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Charles Champion.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Janice Charles.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Millie Collins.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Marianne Cowp.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Pam Drake.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Vincent Driscoll.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Anthony Ernest.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Robert Fisher.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Christopher Franks.
I'm here and I have nothing to declare.
And Councillor Gilligan may join us later. Councillor Russell Godfrey.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Ewan Goodjohn.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Stephen Haynes.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Howard Hamilton.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Sally Hanks.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor William Hennessy.
Present, I'd like to declare a personal interest in an agenda item 3A, being a council tenant. However, this personal interest does not equate to a prejudicial interest in line with paragraph 19.3.3 of the Code of Conduct.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Hodges.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Mark Hooper.
Bresennol a dim byd yw ddatgan.
Councillor Catherine Iannucci.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Gwyn John.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Ian Johnson.
Bresennol a dim byd yw ddatgan.
Councillor Susan Lloyd Selby, the Mayor.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Belinda Lovelock Edwards.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Julie Lynch Wilson.
Present, and I would like to declare that I have a non-prejudicial.
Councillor.
Councillor, Councillor, we heard part of your declaration, but not all of it. Would you like to just repeat that, please, for the record?
Present, and I would like to declare.
We're not picking that up. Sorry. I'll put. Councillor Lynch Wilson, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here. Can you not hear me?
No, you declared a non-prejudicial interest, are you?
Yes, because I live in a council property.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, that's lovely. Thank you. No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
I don't know what's affecting my mic.
Okay. Thank you. I did hear it that time. Thank you very much. Councillor Kevin Marnie.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Naomi Marshalsea.
And Bresennol a dim byd yw ddatgan.
Councillor Michael Morgan.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Jane Norman.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Helen Payne.
Bresennol, present, and can I declare on item 3A, page 10.2.2, as Slamai is my employer. My interest is personal but not prejudicial. Thank you.
Councillor Elliot Penn.
Present, nothing to declare. Thank you.
Councillor Sandra Perks.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Ian Perry.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Joanna Prothero.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Rubus Vignanum.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Carys Stallard.
And Bresennol a dim byd yw ddatgan.
Councillor Neil Thomas.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Rhys Thomas.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Stephen William.
Bresennol a dim byd yw ddatgan.
Councillor Eddie Williams.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Mark Wilson.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Nicholas Wood.
Present and nothing to declare.
Thank you, members.
Thank you, Karen. So we move on to agenda item 3, the final housing revenue account budget proposals for 2023-24 and rent setting for 2023-24. This agenda item is for approval. Before I move on to open the debate on this issue, Councillor Gilligan, you've raised your hand. Did you wish to speak?
Yes, it's just to say, sorry I'm late. I was putting out sandbags because we got a flood warning for me and my neighbour. I'd just like to say I'm now present and got nothing to declare for the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So agenda item 3, as I was saying, this agenda item is for approval. Councillor Burnett, leader, can you take us through it, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I will. This was a reference from Cabinet on the 5th of January 2023. and it's the final housing revenue account budget proposals for 2023-24 and the rent setting for 23-24. In effect, the report details the final housing revenue account budget proposals for this year. Local authorities are required to keep a housing revenue account and to set the budget for their housing revenue account on an annual basis. The housing revenue account is a ring-fenced account, so we need to say that it's actually independent of the council accounts per se, which is self-funded mainly by council dwelling rents, and expenditure consists of a number of areas, which is staffing to manage the provision, repairs and maintenance costs of the housing stock, capital financing costs to service the debt. So if we take a debt out to build properties or something, then it's the financing cost for that would come out of the HRA. Revenue contributions towards the capital programme, including decarbonisation and new developments. The report sets out the proposed rents and service charges for 23-24. As part of the Rented Homes Wales Act, the council is required to give 2 months' notice of any increase to council tenants, which is why this report is coming ahead of the budget, which it historically has done. It's a change in the the legislation. The initial HRA was reported to Cabinet on the 17th of November. Homes and Safe Communities scrutiny on the 7th of December. Sorry, Cabinet 17th of November. Homes and Safe Communities scrutiny on 7th of December, and Corporate Performance and Resources scrutiny subsequently. Both scrutiny committees noted the initial report. On the 17th of November 2022, Welsh Government issued the policy for social housing rents, and they state the maximum allowable uplift has been set at 6.5% for the coming year. And the initial proposals have been subsequently reviewed in the context of the Welsh Government statement, and also in terms of the areas the things that we want to achieve with it. So looking at the 30-year housing business plan, and so the proposed housing rent increase is 5.5%. That's 1% below the Welsh Government maximum, and approximately half the current level of inflation. In setting the level of rents, the council aims to achieve a number of key priorities. Firstly, to reflect not only the current financial situation with high interest rates and inflationary cost pressures in delivering current priorities and commitments, to ensure that the council can deliver on its ambitious targets of building new council housing at pace and scale, to decarbonise existing stock and meet Welsh housing quality standards, the new ones that are due to be introduced in 2023. But also due to the financial pressures that our council tenants face, we want to take the following actions to mitigate the impacts faced. So that we would sign up to no evictions due to financial hardship in 2023-24, where tenants engaged with us when they were facing difficulty, so we could help them. That we would continue to provide targeted support to tenants facing difficulties. We would maximise the use of all suitable housing stock, undertake a joint campaign to engage with tenants experiencing financial difficulties, build on existing engagement with tenants on rent setting. We would commit to invest in existing homes to keep them safe, warm and affordable. We would work in partnership with tenants, Welsh Government funders and other partners to develop a consistent approach to affordability, and we would participate in an assurance exercise in April 2023 to reflect on the application of the rent policy to date. In setting or in developing the proposed housing rent increase, the we use the Housemark affordability tool, in which we compared council housing rents with local registered social landlords of housing associations, and the rents are still lower, and also with market rents, and they are phenomenally lower than market rents. In addition, as a benchmark, council tenants would pay less than 30% of their income on rent, which is a common affordability test. In setting this, we don't seek to make a profit, but to reinvest income for the benefits of our tenants and to increase the number of people who are able to access council properties to have affordable, secure housing. The proposals are before you. As I said, they've been to Cabinet. Recommendation 1 actually lays out the final housing revenue account budget proposals for next year. Recommendation 2 recommends that the average rent increase for next year would be 5.5%, as set out in paragraph 2.17 of the report. And thirdly, that Council approves the increase suggested for other services, which are set out at the bottom of page 3 on the reference. And finally, that Council approves all changes to rents and service charges to be implemented from the 1st of April 2023, with the first week of April being a non-chargeable rent week, and that increase notices are sent to tenants 2 months in advance of the new charges coming into effect as required by the Rented Homes Wales Act. And I would so move, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. The importance of council housing simply cannot be overstated, particularly even more so, I think, in the current cost of living crisis, when as referred to, the private rents have actually ballooned much higher actually than the interest rates have actually increased for mortgage for house owners. And then this is plunging tenants into even further worry and financial duress. Now, just as a reminder, the HRA actually covers the 30-year housing plan. And
excuse
within
me, Councillor Brooks, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I'm conscious that the recommendations have been moved but not yet seconded. So can I just check that before you continue?
I will be seconding them.
So the recommendations are seconded?
Are seconded, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to second them at the end, but that's fine. So I second them. Now, within that 30-year housing plan, obviously, it's about protecting our tenants and the housing waiting list, which are quite substantial. And we do this then, obviously, by building new council housing, as well ensuring that we have the funding to implement or to start implementing the new WHQS. Now, I was the previous cabinet member when we started the WHQS back in 2012. And I think we can all see for ourselves the tremendous positive impact that made on the quality of our housing, and actually ensuring our tenants live in good quality homes which are fit for purpose. And I think that is really important. So obviously the time has gone on, we're 10 years on. So we need to ensure then that we actually maintain our standards of the quality, and obviously then, which is why we need to start WHQS works, WHQS number 2, if you like to say. It's also imperative that we continue to support tenants via our housing officers. And then this way we can ensure sustainable tenancies, which often are for some of our most vulnerable tenants, and that is incredibly important. And then it's worth noting, I think, that the HRA benefits and supports all of our tenants. And don't forget that there's actually a robust methodology for calculating and allocating the HRA costs. And that demonstrates why the costs are being charged and actually who benefits from the services the costs relate to. So I fully support the recommendations that are in this report, and I'd like to second those formally. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Ian Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. As one of the councillors for the Buttrells ward, where more than 10% of properties are council houses, I will not be voting for this 5.5% rent increase tonight, not at a time when residents I represent face increased bills for food, for keeping their homes warm, and shortly for council tax. I'll be doing this because the increase is high and the process has been poor. The Vale Council owns almost 4,000 properties in the county. There are just over 60,000 dwellings in the Vale. We're the landlords for almost 7% of homes. We're both the largest landlord locally and, through our responsibilities, the providers of last resort. We have a responsibility to provide homes at a reasonable and affordable cost and not to unfairly push people into poverty. The comparison is made in the reporting we've heard tonight with other social landlords in the open market, but I'm not responsible for those. I am responsible for our council housing stock. A quick history lesson for many councillors here. A decade ago, we held a referendum on outsourcing our council homes to a social landlord. Our residents voted to stay under our council control. This morning, I attended a Public Services Board event to discuss areas of the Vale with the highest levels of deprivation and consider how we can resolve those challenges. The part of my ward under discussion includes almost all of what our housing team describe as the central estates. How can we expect to solve these problems when we're adding additional costs to people's daily lives? This does not fly in the face of the council's so-called poverty-solving initiatives and support. We have warm words and photo ops of warm spaces, but we're hitting our residents in the pocket. We know that around 40% of our residents are our tenants, our contract holders, get some form of housing support. That still leaves 60% of residents funding this increase in its entirety. I haven't been able to easily source up-to-date figures, but our 2017 neighbourhood action plans say that 31% of residents at that time were in rent arrears. When the housing revenue account went to Cabinet in November, the indicative rent rise in those papers was 2.75%, a number which drew little attention because it was fairly reasonable in the context of inflation. By the time the final report came to Cabinet last week, that had doubled to 5.5%. That's a figure that requires scrutiny, but we haven't had any. The report, and quoted by the leader earlier, says the initial Cabinet report went to corporate performance and resources scrutiny in December, but I can't remember that debate or find that item on December's agenda or minutes. The final report was nodded through at Cabinet last week, and an offer was made to debate its impact upon residents at Monday's Homes and Safe Communities, but that was rejected. Why 5.5%? What other calculations were undertaken and considered? Why were they rejected? Scrutiny is the place for us to ask these questions in a constructive cross-party setting, but there has been none. The excuse given is the change in timetable because of the Rented Homes Wales Act 2016 is coming to force. That's right, we've been ambushed by a 6-year-old piece of legislation, so we can't scrutinise properly. To me, that's poor. The rent system for residents has long had a ratchet effect, going through 1% percentage point higher than inflation in order to increase the amount raised. I've often found that unfair, and for that reason, we've often voted against these rises in the past. In this case, we have had little explanation of how we've reached this figure, no consideration of the impact upon residents during a cost of living crisis. I'll be asking the Plaid Cymru Group to vote against this rent rise tonight, and I ask other councillors, especially those who, like me, represent wards with hundreds of council house residents, to join us in rejecting this and request proper scrutiny. This is real world politics. Don't vote to make people's lives harder. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Mark Hooper, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll just start by echoing the words of Councillor Johnson then and saying that I too will be voting against these measures today for all the reasons he said. But there are a couple of points that I'd like to bring to the attention of Council. The first one being that it's only 2 months and 2 days ago that we, with some dissension from within this Council, agreed the Council's their self-assessment for 2020-21. And part of that was a reflection of looking forward at the cost of living pressures that were about to hit many of our residents in the Vale. And there was a lot of, as you know, warm words about concern for people here in that. And there were things in there which I think this particular increase doesn't reflect, particularly the responding to the cost of living crisis, tackling poverty and inequality. There was a statement that there was a need to maximise use of local knowledge and understanding of our communities. And I do wonder and question as to whether we understand the needs and concerns of those people who are our residents in our council house, tenants in our council houses today. There was a cost of living working group, and the only activity that they seem to have been able to achieve was to pass out the £150 Welsh Government funding section. But they did say that they did some detailed analysis of the impacts of the cost of living crisis. And a question that I'd like to ask, because this is our first chance to ask these questions, is whether that analysis actually showed where the local council tenants were, how would they be affected by these changes. Within the report itself, there's a reference to an increase in bad debts as a result of this. And I just wonder whether there was an assessment made as every point of increase in the percentage, how much does that add to the bad debt provision? And was that analysis put into this? And could please outline how that is? There's also a reference under 2.11 about the new houses that we'll be developing in terms of how there'll be an improvement on our current council house living. And at the recent scrutiny committee, regeneration scrutiny committee, we talked about the need to have passive house standards. And I just wonder whether this is an opportunity to re-reference that, because if we're serious about our net zero commitments, then this needs to be part of it. And finally, I just want to question as to whether or not the final budget figures for capital spending include sufficient to cover the retrofit of our existing housing to be able to move us away from gas-fired central heating, the installation of solar, etc. And I'd appreciate a response on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Councillor Collins, please.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I would like to say that I am disappointed that this final proposal did not come to Homes and Safe Community Scrutiny Committee before tonight, before the full council meeting tonight. As the leader has mentioned, the committee did see an earlier working draft, but this final proposal is markedly different. And I believe that council and members alike may have benefited from the discussions raised in scrutiny. As chair, I would have appreciated the opportunity to discuss this prior to tonight. I have concerns about this. Times have been tough for everybody since March 2020. I am worried about the adverse effects this would have on tenants. The council already has tenants in arrears, and this will increase the number. I'm worried about the possible detrimental effects on our tenants' well-being and mental health. Should this be agreed by council tonight, there must be strong support in place for these tenants. Also, when this matter arises, as it inevitably will, I request that proper scrutiny is followed on this. Not to have the scrutiny this deserves and requires is disrespectful not only to our council tenants but to the residents of the Vale as a whole, who should think and who should know that we are giving every decision we make the proper consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Councillor Mark Wilson, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just a few points of observation. If people look at the recommendations on page 3, you will see a table. And on that table, it's a list of expenditures and income. Now, you probably look at the accumulative working balance figure on the 1st of April 2023 and the 31st of March 2024. What you notice for the next year, there'll be a deficit of £10 million, so over £10.5 million. As a result, the balance on the end of March 2024 will be 949,000. Now, if we start playing around with these figures and start reducing the amount from 5.5%, then we're looking at cuts of expenditure, aren't we? Now, as you probably know, I'm the cabinet member responsible for responsive repairs of housing in the Vale Glamorgan under my role as responsible for building services. Clearly, what are we going to do if we start cutting this? Will that mean longer repairs? Will it mean tenants doing their repairs instead or not reporting them because it will take too long? These are things I do not want to happen. But these are the choices if we may face if we start reducing rental increases. Yes, of course, I don't want rental increases as council tenants. There are many council tenants that myself and the leader have in our ward. Of course we don't. But the reality is we know that costs are going up. All you're aware, the cost in housing in particular is much more than perhaps other areas of the council. Partly that's due to Brexit as well. Partly it's also been due to COVID. But the reality is, you know, inflation is around 10%. Now we're asking for an increase of 5.5%. Now, of course, and the other point with Councillor Collins, and I totally agree with her on this, we're always very helpful to council tenants and we intend to continue. In this report, as rightly it says, that if tenants engage with us, then obviously we'd be supporting them. We want tenants to engage. We want tenants to report matters. Of course you do. And as you know, Councillor Collins, I've been to your scrutiny committee on more than one occasion as a cabinet member. And I've said repeatedly that people need to report things to us so we can get on top of it and make things better before they get even worse. So I'm clearly, you know, we need to support this. And the other point I'd like to also make, of course, is our new build programme. All of us are acutely aware there are almost 6,000 people on the waiting list of housing. We're acutely aware that we need to build more and more houses. Now, some of that money, in fact, most of that money comes from here and some of it comes from Welsh Government. Clearly, we need to continue to do this. But again, if we don't increase the council rents, then we'll find it more and more difficult to do this. So, you know, that's another reason why I will support the 5.5%. And the final reason is, of course, and I think this is vital here, that we all want to have a good managed service. And it's important that we employ good housing officers, which I know we do, and we need to continue to employ them. And these are the reasons why I'll be supporting the 5.5%. So thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stephen Haynes, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This year's final housing revenue account budget proposals are being brought forward in incredibly difficult times. The inflationary pressures we're experiencing are causing significant hardship as the costs for both households and the council are increasing. The proposed budget increase rents by about 5.5%. This is considerably below the current rate of inflation and below the 6.5% max allowed by the Welsh Government. As it is, the shortfall between the proposed rent increase and the inflation will result in the council incurring considerable costs. Nonetheless, I believe this is the right thing to do. While in an ideal world we would see a lower increase than that proposed, or in fact none at all, I do not believe this is financially possible. With this in mind, the Conservative Group is happy to support the proposed budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ewan Goodjohn, please.
Thank you, Mayor. As we know, people are under severe financial hardship, and young people are just under that hardship as well. We have talked again and again in committees, and we talk again and again in our plans about supporting young people. Young people who are living alone have a few options. They can buy a house. Well, can we really buy a house under current circumstances, with house prices having increased so much under lockdown and mortgage rates being so high because of the Conservative government in Westminster? You can private rent. The market rents are so unbelievably high and the conditions can sometimes be exploitative. The private rent houses I've seen of some of the people in my ward are horrific. Additionally, you can rent from the council or from other housing associations. This is the only option for a lot of people, and yet our waiting list only seems to increase. The council builds more houses, as is right, so that we can house more people. But it is the only option for many young people to go on the waiting list and wait, possibly years, for proper, decent, cheap housing. None of us here want to increase rents. People are struggling as it is. But if we want to be financially viable, if we want to be able to build the new houses that is necessary to try and keep the waiting list down, if we want suitable housing for everyone and secure housing for everyone that conforms to our Project Zero net zero targets, then I think we must vote to this 5.5%. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ian Buckley, please.
Thank you, Chair. Most of my points have just been covered then. But what I would like to add, where we're looking for net zero, if we haven't got houses which people that do the lower paid jobs of our communities can live near us, the carbon footprint of them travelling from however far away they have to live in affordable housing to get here is going to negate what we don't do. Where the vote was held 10 years ago, whether the tenants stayed with the council or they went to social housing, the fact that they wanted to stay with the council has saved them a huge amount of money, far in excess of the 5.5% increase we're trying to put. We're reluctantly trying to we're reluctantly voting on now to save the housing stock that we got and to improve and increase the housing stock that we got. I applaud the fact that we're going to have no monetary evictions, providing tenants engage with us. And I'm sure that when the tenants see what we're trying to do to improve the housing stock and increase it, they'll appreciate the hard decisions that we're having to make.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chris Franks, please.
Thank you, Mayor. As a small aside, can I proudly say I was possibly one of the very few people in this room who actively campaigned to save housing many years ago. And it was a very close battle, but I was pleased to play my part. I have two substantial points, Mayor. One is regarding new build. I welcome the aspiration, but I wonder how much confidence can we put in the new build programme? How clear is it that our aspirations will be achieved? We do not have a particularly good record in capital projects, and I'm looking for assurances that these aspirations will come to fruition in the 12 months. And secondly, I would ask if we have approached private landlords to see if we as an authority can rent out their properties, and through the authority, often these properties are poor quality or even empty, and there are initiatives where we could take over the management, and the end result will be more houses brought back into beneficial use. So I would appreciate some answers along those lines, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Buckley, can I check whether or not you had a point that you wish to make, or if that's a legacy hand?
Apologies, Chair, it's a legacy hand.
No, that's fine. It's just so I don't miss anybody who wants to speak or raise a point. Can I move on then? I think Councillor Franks, I assume you've also finished speaking, and if I can ask you to lower your hand, that would be very helpful. And we move on to Councillor George Carroll, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'll only speak briefly. I echo the comments of Councillor Haynes as our housing spokesperson, who has already highlighted our group's position. It is regrettable that rents do have to go up, but I think that if we look at the pressures on the account and on the budget, we do need to provide maintenance costs, etc. And I think that this does, regrettably, though it may be the case, strike the right balance on that. I do agree with the points about lack of scrutiny on this. I think that it would have been preferable for this to have come to both scrutiny committees, and I would urge next year that the administration make sure that that is the case, because I think that it is important that members have the opportunity to do so, and I hope that this won't be repeated.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gwynne-John, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Basically, at the moment, we have 3,800 homes, council homes. Now, I mean, quite honestly, this is a very poor number of homes that we have, and we've got to look to building more homes. But the makeup of this housing account makes it very difficult, because everything has to be collective, as the leader has said. This is totally separate from the budget accounts that we will be facing shortly. The situation as well is that I sought advice about this, and quite simply, 70% of the people currently paying council rents are on housing benefit. In addition, with this increase, it's likely that more people will come under housing benefit. So quite simply, it's not as desperate in some ways as we make out to be. Also, the problem we have at the moment is that whatever work we do, the costs are going up and up. I found this in our own community in Landmace, where we have had to delay a flooding scheme because we haven't got the money to support it, because the contractors' costs have gone up and up. And this is the case with our housing. We will have the same issues to face with buying materials and improving current council houses over the next 12 months. It's not an easy environment out there to work in. And quite simply, there's no alternative but to support, in my opinion, tonight's raise in rents. We don't want to see it, but where are we going to get the money from for housing and to look after our current housing? And that's what we're faced with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Nick Hodges, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking at the actual proposed final housing revenue account for the forthcoming year, which is the subject of this debate. And I see in the expenditure, and this is why the expenditure is quite high, the increase in provision for bad debts, and I see a figure there of £948,000 for next year. Now, we've heard the figure mentioned a few times of the number of council properties we have at 3,800 or so. And if you do a quick division, the 948,000 divided by 3,800 properties comes to £250 a year equivalent per property for bad debt increased provision, or £5 a week, which is virtually the same as you're asking for in the rise. So we're basically, by putting the rents up by this rate of 5.5%, largely across the board, we're actually increasing our debt provision there and causing the issue that we're worried about. I can't support this. I've heard some crocodile tears tonight from our Labour friends, but I'm sorry, you have to do better than this, and I cannot support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I see, Councillor Ian Perry, please.
Yeah, just very quickly. It's good that there'll be no evictions, but that's with a clause, isn't it? And is the Vale of Glamorgan Council good at engagement? Are we expecting them to come to us, or will we reach out to them? We've just heard about bad debts, and bad debt is likely to increase, cancelling out potentially the revenue brought in. It was also mentioned about repairs, and there are properties in my ward that do need repair work done, but this hasn't been carried out for at least 5 years, and residents have told me goes further back than that. So work isn't being done. Will this change it? Well, suddenly we start to get the work done. As a local authority, should we be setting an example to housing associations and private landlords in rents and increasing rents? Because what private landlords do naturally is maximise their rental return. They put the rents up as high as they can to maximise the return on their investment, which is what is driving many of the problems, particularly for young people. I don't know how we solve that. There are various ideas, but perhaps we should be setting an example in trying to keep rents down and not encouraging people to keep putting them up as far as you can go. 70% of our tenants are already on housing benefit, and I wonder if we will actually be getting more income from central government as a result of that. Housing is very complex in the UK. Housing is seen as an investment, and it should be seen as a public good. Perhaps I'm a bit too left-wing for this council. I think on balance I'll be voting against this increase for different reasons.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elliott-Penn, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to quickly just concur with what Gwyn said, Councillor Gwyn John said earlier about the building increases. As a builder, I see the insane increases this year. I mean, as an overall, the UK has seen 26.5% increase overall in building costs, with steel, concrete and rebar going up insane amounts, 50% plus in some cases. With those increases, how do we maintain the housing stock without this, as Councillor Carroll, said, regrettable increase? But I'll be voting for the increase because we need to maintain our costs, and unfortunately, with inflation and these increases, we're going to need every single penny we can get. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Perry, can I assume that's a legacy hand?
Yeah, sorry.
That's fine. Thank you. So I see no more hands. So I assume, therefore, that there are no other councillors that want to speak on this matter. And therefore, we will move to a vote in relation to the recommendations that are before Council. The recommendations have been moved en bloc, and therefore we will take the vote accordingly. Karen, can I ask you to take us through the vote, please? Thank you.
Is Councillor Burnett going to respond to the debate?
Forgive me, I missed that hand. My apologies, Councillor Burnett. Leader, would you like to respond? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll whiz through. There's an awful lot of contributions today, and I will try and whiz through. If I miss any, please come back to me, and I will try and answer you separately rather than prolong the discussion tonight. I think I have to say straight off, it is a difficult balance. It is a difficult balance between actually increasing rents, but also trying to deliver the ambitious aims we have, not only for current tenants, but also future tenants. In terms of current tenants, we want to meet the next phase of the Welsh Housing Quality Standard. We want to decarbonise. We are already doing some work on that. decarbonising our properties will also increase insulation. It will make them more affordable for the people that live in them. But more than that, we want to deliver for future tenants. We want to deliver more housing. During the pandemic, I was talking to a nurse who was working in an intensive care unit. She had to move 3 times. She was in insecure, private, rented accommodation with 2 small children. And she said to me, her comment was, "They can't do this to me. I'm working in intensive care." And I said, "Well, you can fight them." She said, "I can't fight them. I just haven't got the energy to fight them." So she moved 3 separate properties during the pandemic. Yes, we have got a cost of living group. I will ask officers to update Councillor Hooper on what's actually happening on that. It's rather a lot, as you might imagine, and particularly the work in Llantwit Major, which has attracted about £100,000 lottery grant, if I'm not mistaken. Councillor Hooper talks about bad debts. It's bad debts per se, not bad debts created by this. In terms of passive house isn't always specifically relevant, because it means that you have to basically minimise the amount of sort of traffic in and out of the house. If you've got small children, doesn't necessarily work. But we are working on low or zero carbon properties and decarbonisation. There are already pilots, and our new build houses are moving further and further towards zero carbon. Councillor Haynes, I agree. You know, inflation is huge. An awful lot of the difference, if you actually look at the reference and look at the expenditure levels on this versus the initial proposals, then an awful lot of that is down to inflation and the other things that we're currently facing. Ewan made some very, very relevant comments there. Yes, I mean, particularly young people facing severe hardship, whether that be financial or in terms of housing. Councillor Franks, in terms of new build, it's difficult, I will say that. I mean, we just had the situation with one of the contractors going into liquidation, but we've turned that around. And so we are back on track to deliver the housing at Hayswood Road, and the other is profiled, and our houses are good quality, affordable, and well insulated. I will say a big challenge is actually finding land and getting planning permission for it, but I'll come back to that later. Have we approached private landlords? We work very closely with private landlords because we have to. If we don't have places for people, we try to assist them into private accommodation. The problem is that market rents are so much higher. I looked at a house recently in Penarth, which was £1,400 a month for a 3-bedroom, and when you look at ours being about 500, you can see the discrepancy. Thank you to Councillor Carroll for being supportive of this. Gwyn, yes, we don't have a number of homes. I think you were mentioning universal credit rather than housing benefit, about 70% on universal credit. But I think that where we're looking at is on the cusp of that, because obviously any increase would be passed on through their universal credit. On the cusp, people on low incomes, that is why we want to put additional support in for those people. And actually, some of the figures that add in that aren't inflationary into the increased expenditure is specifically to provide support to people who are facing hardship, whether that be in maximising benefits, whether that be financial advice, etc. We will be doing more than that. Councillor Hodges made a very interesting point, but I don't think in any way, shape or form you can actually suggest there is any causality in your statement, and I would be interested in debating that further if you think so. Councillor Perry, in terms of evictions, we keep in close contact with tenants who are in rent arrears, and I think that the guarantee that if people are talking to us, that we will work with them and there will be no evictions, is a very important one. But sometimes, because when people get into financial difficulties, life becomes so difficult that actually they switch off, and they put all the envelopes into a drawer and they don't talk to people. This actually works quite effectively at helping us to engage effectively to people so that we can help them. And that is why we say that as long as people are engaging, there will be no evictions. And I've seen that happen, as most of us would have done in terms of supporting local residents. Repairs, yes, we want to do more. There was a hiatus during the pandemic, but they are picking up, and obviously we'll have the WHQS, the new stuff coming out next year. And I put down rents here, but I can't remember what it was, Councillor Perry. So if you want to come back to me, but I think, Elliot, I agree with your comments as well. But I think a plea I would make on this, we talked about whether we can deliver housing. We've talked about the affordability of housing. We've talked about the need for housing, for affordable, secure, warm housing. One of our biggest problems is finding land, maybe for little pocket developments, half a dozen or a dozen. And we need to work with local members to achieve planning permission on those pockets of land. We need to think of the collective good of our current and our future tenants going forward. Nobody should be homeless in the Vale of Glamorgan, and nobody should be living in insecure housing. And so, difficult balance though it may be, I am committed to the proposals before you, and I ask that you support the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. So we will now, excuse me, we will now move to a vote. The recommendations are before you. It's recommendations 1 to 4 within the report. They've been moved en bloc. And so can I please ask the Democratic Services Officer to take us through the vote? Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Mayor. Members, I will commence then. Councillor Anne Asprey, could I have your vote, please?
Against.
Councillor Julie Aviott?
For.
Councillor Rhiannon Birch?
For the recommendations.
Councillor Bronwyn Brooks?
For the recommendations.
Councillor Gillian Bruce?
For the recommendation.
Councillor Ian Buckley?
For the recommendations.
Councillor Liz Burnett?
For the recommendations.
Councillor Samantha Campbell?
Against.
Councillor George Carroll?
For.
Councillor Christine Cave?
For.
Councillor Charles Champion?
I'm for.
Councillor Janice Charles?
For the recommendation.
Councillor Millie Collins?
Against the recommendation, strongly.
Councillor Marianne Kaup?
Against.
Councillor Pam Drake?
For the recommendations.
Councillor Vincent Driscoll?
For the recommendations.
Councillor Anthony Ernest?
For the recommendations.
Councillor Robert Fisher? Councillor Robert Fisher? Councillor Carroll?
Councillor Fisher is using his mobile phone and the connection is poor, so he will try and make connection before the end of the meeting.
Okay, I'll come back. If Councillor Fisher cannot speak, can you put it in the chat? If you're able to mention that to him.
I will advise him of that.
Okay. Councillor Christopher Franks?
Against these Labour Tory recommendations.
Councillor Wendy Gilligan?
For recommendation.
Councillor Russell Godfrey,
For the recommendation.
Councillor Emma Goodjohn,
For the recommendation.
Councillor Ewan Goodjohn,
For the recommendation.
Councillor Stephen Haynes,
For the recommendation. Yeah.
Councillor Howard Hamilton,
For the recommendation.
Councillor Sally Hanks,
For the recommendation.
Councillor William Hennessy,
For the recommendation.
Councillor Nick Hodges,
Against.
Councillor Mark Hooper,
Against.
Councillor Catherine Iannucci,
For.
Councillor Gwyn John,
For the recommendation.
Councillor Ian Johnson,
Yn erbyn, against.
Councillor Susan Lloyd-Selby,
For the recommendations.
Councillor Belinda Lovelock Edwards,
For the recommendations.
Councillor Julie Lynch-Wilson,
For the recommendations.
Councillor Kevin Marnie, for Councillor Naomi Marshalsea,
For the recommendations.
Councillor Michael Morgan,
For the recommendation.
Councillor Jane Norman,
For the recommendation.
Councillor Helen Payne,
For the recommendations.
Councillor Elliot Penn,
For the
Councillor-
recommendations.
Councillor Sandra Perks,
For the recommendation.
Councillor Ian Perry.
On balance, against.
Okay. Councillor Joanna Prothero,
For the recommendation.
Councillor Ruben Sivignanum,
For the recommendations.
Councillor Caris Stallard,
For or Blythe.
Councillor Neil Thomas,
For the recommendations.
Councillor Rhys Thomas,
For.
Councillor Steffan William,
Yn erbyn.
Councillor Eddie Williams,
For the recommendations.
Councillor Mark Wilson,
For the recommendations.
Councillor Nicholas Wood.
For the recommendation.
Is Councillor Robert Fisher able to join us? I can't see that he is, and I can't see anything in the chat. So, Madam Mayor, I will have to mark Councillor Robert Fisher is not in the meeting at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. So the recommendations are approved. The recommendations are approved, and there is no further agenda items before Council this evening. So it just remains for me to thank you all for your time. Stay safe in the weather outside, and thank you very much and good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night,
Good night.
everybody.
Good night.